movement enters its second month, and with over 900 events in 4 continents over the weekend, certainly shows no sign of letting up. We are joined now by Jeffrey Sachs. He is the director of the Earth Institute at Columbia. Professor Sachs, we spoke in an earlier segment about your new book, The Price of Civilization, and the income inequality you think is channeled some of the anger that's on display at Occupy Wall Street in those movements. Where do you see this movement going from here?
I think that this movement taps a powerful sentiment in America. The slogan, which is the dominant slogan of the Occupy Wall Street movement, "We are the 99%, is something that people feel around the country, that somehow the top 1% has really run away with it. They've gotten vast wealth, and they've used that to gain vast political power. They've also abused that power, and I think the Occupy Wall Street movement is really expressing the idea that people want their democracy back. They don't want a corporatocracy.
Now, one of the sort of surprising things about, if you go down there, you will see a few communists and a couple of anarchists, but by and large, I don't think there's a particularly radical impulse or an anti-capitalist crowd. Do you think we have come to conflate capitalism with our banking/financial/tax system too much in this country?
Well, I think that people are really mad at Wall Street. It's not just a metaphor. They're mad at the fact that J.P. Morgan sold toxic assets together with a hedge fund to unsuspecting investors. The SEC charged J.P. Morgan. They had to pay $150 million fine. They're mad that Goldman Sachs ended up paying a $550 million fine for doing the same thing with John Paulson. They're mad at the fact that John Paulson, the hedge fund manager, says, "Oh, you shouldn't mind what I do," but he and Goldman put together this abacus portfolio, sold it to German state banks, which lost a ton of money so that Mr. Paulson could make a ton of money. This is not how financial markets can possibly contribute to economic well-being and the long-term development of this country. They're really annoyed that not only is that happening, but that the tax system has become so abusive that hedge fund managers like Paulson, who took home paychecks of billions of dollars, have statutory top tax rates of 15% on that income. And they know that our biggest companies are paying the lowest share of national income and corporate taxes right now in modern history, because the IRS has basically connived with these companies to let them transfer price internationally and park their profits in the Cayman Islands and in Bermuda.
Right, well, you just hit on that. The IRS has connived with these corporations, and we've talked to some other guests who say that they should be occupying Congress, that the anger at Wall Street is misdirected because a lot of what they did was legal, and it was sanctioned by our government. Yes, there may have been some crimes committed as well, but there was no crime that they committed in taking the bailout money and then not having to do sitting on those funds, things of that nature. Is the anger misdirected?
Well, there's plenty of anger in Congress, so there's anger to go around. Our country is more disgusted with Congress than it has ever been in history. They actually call Congress a special interest group. But Wall Street knows what it's doing. Come on, let's not be children here. Wall Street pays vast sums in lobbying. Wall Street has a revolving door straight to the White House and to Congress. Wall Street bundles vast amounts of money for campaign contributions. If Wall Street were doing business and leaving government to the public, that would be one thing. But Wall Street and other big corporate lobbies are trying to run the government as well. That's really what's disgusting.
Right, and this is a bipartisan critique, right? This isn't just about Republicans or Democrats. You don't see much difference between the two, do you?
Well, if you look at how this financial abuse took hold, Ronald Reagan did his part, and Bill Clinton surely did his part. And basically, it's been Democrats and Republicans who are feeding at the trough of these big interests. So I think there's a mild difference. I say that the Republicans were mainly bought by big oil, and the Democrats mainly by Wall Street, but it's a pretty close call.
So there's two main critiques that I've heard about Occupy Wall Street. One, they don't know what they want. There's too many different requests and not even like a list of demands. And also that it's a leaderless movement. Do you think that they need a leader? And do you see anybody out there with the ability to step into that role? And I think some people might look at you and say you're a candidate for that role.
I think it's amazing what they've accomplished because, look, in a few weeks they have protests in more than 1,000 places in this country and hundreds of places abroad. They're tapping into a widespread sentiment. I do think that the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal is mighty confused. They don't get it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the bankers don't get it. But I think that's because a lot of rich and powerful people have been living in a cocoon, in a shell in this country, and maybe they should be listening more carefully and they'd understand more clearly why people are upset. I mean, after all, look, all the profits, money, wealth went to the top. The privileges were abused by unethical behavior and actually illegal behavior in many cases. And then when everything crumbled, those same banks, even the Wall Street Journal, that great free market press of ours, said, "Oh, you got to bail out the banks.
Right.
Don't you understand market failure?" And then they wonder why people are upset. Come on, either it's a game or it's worse than we think. If they can't understand why people are annoyed.
So you don't think this movement's going away anytime soon, do you?
Well, I think the underlying sentiment is not going to go away, period, until things change in this country.
All right, we're going to leave it there, Professor Sachs. Thanks very much.